For TV 100. Happy Black History Month. We are almost done with narratives of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave, written by himself. We are on installment episode 15. So in 14, Frederick Douglass was betrayed by a slave. He had planned, they were planning, they were going to run away. And as usual, there's always going to be a traitor there. So he was jailed. The other slaves were jailed and punished. And um, so he got sent off to work on a shipyard. Yeah, and he was getting beaten by racist people there that was working on the shipyard because there were free men, free black men who had their freedom, who were working. And so the white ship workers said that they do not want to work with them free men because eventually they will replace them and they would not be able to work. So Frederick Douglass got into a altercation. He was attacked by one of them and he fought back and he ended up getting beaten up pretty bad, almost losing his eye. And so this is where we left off. He goes back to where he lives and he's surprised that he's greeted with a little bit of compassion there. So this is number 15. This is Inform TV 100. God bless you. Happy Black History Month. Please hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and please subscribe. You won't regret it. And share these videos and share them with your family. I know a lot of people, including myself, have read the narrative, The Life of Frederick Douglass before. Some have and some have not. But it's always good to read our Black history / American history to get reminded of how far we've come and the things that were done in the past is a reflection of what's going on today. And also to give our honor and give our flowers to Frederick Douglass and the other people, forefathers, ancestors who did the work so that there could be freedom and liberty, which is what is being strived for. Okay, so we are going to go in. This is after he was at his master's house and they were tending to his wound. They put fresh lean beef on it, and seeing her return to her old kind, affectionate ways almost made up for my suffering. That's the master's wife who initially was teaching him how to read until she found out that slaves should never be taught to read, and she was turned very evil. But he said she's returning to her kind ways when she saw his injuries. As soon as I recovered a bit, Hugh Auld took me to a lawyer named Watson to see what could be done. Watson asked who had witnessed the assault. Hugh Auld told him that it had occurred in Gardner's shipyard at midday while many men were present. Watson said that he couldn't do anything unless some white men came forward and testified. My word was worth nothing. If I had been killed in the presence of 1,000 blacks, their combined testimony would not have prompted the arrest of even one of the murderers. Of course, it was impossible to get any white to testify on my behalf against other whites. Even those who may have sympathized with me wouldn't do this. It required more courage than they possessed. At that time, the slightest show of humanity toward a black was condemned as abolitionism, and that was a dangerous word. Bloody minded people were fond of saying, damn the abolitionists and damn the niggers. Nothing was done about the assault. Such was and such remains the state of things in the Christian, oh yeah, Christian city of Baltimore. Finding that he could get no satisfaction, Hugh Auld refused to let me return to Gardner's shipyard. He kept me himself, and his wife cared for my wound until it healed. Hugh Auld then took me to Walter Price Shipyard, where he was foreman. There I was taught to caulk. Within 1 year of my leaving Gardner's, I was able to earn wages equal to those of the most experienced caulkers. I sought my own jobs, made my own contracts, and collected the money, and I earned about $7 a week, sometimes as much as $9. The money was paid to me and rightfully was mine. Yet each Saturday night I handed over my earnings to Hugh Auld. Why? Because he could force me to. Even so, my life was much smoother and more comfortable than before. When I couldn't get caulking work, I did nothing. During my leisure time, old thoughts of freedom stole over. While in Gardner's employment, I had been under such constant pressure that I had thought of almost nothing but my survival. I almost had forgotten about liberty. I have observed about my slavery. I have observed this about my slavery. Improved condition increased rather than lessened my desires to be free, to make slaves content. It is necessary to make them believe that slavery is right. This can be done only by preventing them from thinking. Chapter 15. I now come to the time in my life when I finally escaped from slavery. It would give me much pleasure to reveal all the facts connected with my escape, but that could create great difficulties for others. Instead, I will state only these facts for which I alone am responsible and can be made to suffer. In the early part of 1838, I became quite restless. I could see no reason why I should pour the rewards of my toil into Hugh Auld's purse at the end of every week. Whenever I bought Hugh Auld my weekly wages, he would count the money, then look me in the face with a robber's like fierceness and ask, "Is this all?" He was satisfied with nothing less than every cent. However, when I made $6, he sometimes gave me 6 cents to encourage me, and I believe ease his conscience. To me, his giving me any part of my wages show that he knew I was entitled to all of them. My discontent grew. I constantly watched for a way to escape. Finding no direct way, I decided to try to save money for my escape. I asked Hugh Auld if I could work for myself. After some reflection, he agreed, provided that I would bear the expense of my clothing and caulking tools, pay for room and board somewhere, and at the end of each week give him $3 because my weekly expenses would include about $2.50 for a room and board and another 50 cents for clothing and tools. This meant that my weekly expenses would total about $6. Rain or shine, work or no work, at the end of each week, I would have to give Hugh Auld $3. The arrangement would relieve him of all need to look after me while guaranteeing his $3 each week. In contrast, I would have increased responsibilities and anxieties. Still, I preferred this new arrangement to the old situation. To bear a freeman's responsibilities was a step toward freedom, and I was determined to succeed. I dedicated myself to making money. I was ready to work day and night, by my industry, I was able to meet my expenses and put aside a little money every week. I continued in this way from May to August. Then one Saturday evening, I went with some friends to a camp meeting about 10 miles from Baltimore. Early in the week, I had agreed to go with them. I had planned to give Hugh Ogg his weekly $3 before going. However, when the day he arrived, I was delayed by my employer. Rather than disappoint my friends, I met them at the agreed time and went to the camp meeting without paying Hugh Ogg. I knew that he had no immediate need for the money. I stayed at the camp meeting one day longer than I had intended, but I called on Hugh Ogg as soon as I returned. I found him very angry. He said that he had a great mind to give me a severe whipping. He asked how I dared leave the city without his permission. I responded that I had not known that I needed to ask him where I could go and when. This reply troubled him. After reflecting a few minutes, he said that I no longer could work for myself. He said that the next thing he knew, I would be running away. He told me to bring my tools and clothing home. I did as he demanded, but instead of working, I spent the whole week doing nothing. I did this to get back at him. Saturday night, he asked me for my week's wages. I told him that I had none. I had done no work for that week. We nearly came to blows. He raised, swearing his determination to get hold of me. I said nothing, but I was determined that if he laid a hand on me, it would be blow for blow. He did not strike me, but said that I should work continuously from now on. The next day, I thought the matter over and decided that on the 3rd of September, I would make a second attempt to escape. I had 3 weeks to prepare for my journey. Early on Monday, before Hugh had time to arrange any job for me, I went out and got work at Mr. Butler's shipyard. At the end of the week, I brought Hugh nearly $9. He seemed very pleased. My reason for working steadily was to remove any suspicions from his mind that I was planning to run away. I believe that he thought I never had been more content than at that time, but I was planning to escape. The second week passed, and again, I brought him my full wages. He was so pleased. He gave me 25 cents and advised me to make good use of it. I told him I would. Outwardly, things were smooth, but inwardly, I was troubled. I had a number of warm-hearted friends in Baltimore, friends whom I love. The thought of being separated from them forever was extremely painful. I believe that thousands more slaves would escape if it was not for the strong cords of affection that bind them to their friends. Besides the pain of separation, I dreaded failure. The failure of my first attempted attempt tormented me. I felt certain that if I failed again, I would be severely punished and placed where I could hope, never hope to escape. But I remained firm. On September the 3rd, 1838, I left my chains. I reached New York without any interruption. What direction I traveled and by what mode of transportation I must leave unsaid for the reasons I have mentioned. I frequently have been asked how I felt when I found myself in a free state. I never have been able to answer that question to my satisfaction. I felt the highest excitement than I had ever experienced. In writing to a dear friend immediately after my arrival in New York, I said that I felt like someone who had escaped a den of hungry lions. However, this state of mind soon subsided. I still could be captured and taken back to slavery's tortures. This thought filled me with anxiety. Even worse was the great loneliness that overcame me. I was a stranger in the midst of thousands of people. I was afraid to speak to anyone. Speaking to the wrong person might place me in the hands of money loving kidnappers whose business it was to lie to wait for fugitive slaves. I adopted the motto trust no one. I saw an enemy in every white and a cause for distrust in nearly every black. Thank heaven I remained in this sad situation only a short time. I was relieved from it by David Ruggles, whose kindness I'll never forget. I am glad for this opportunity to express the love and gratitude that I feel toward him. David now is blind and in need of the same kindness that he generously showed to others. I had been in New York only a few days when he found me and kindly took me to his boarding house. He was deeply involved in the cases of a number of fugitive slaves. Though watched and hemmed in almost every side, he was more than a match for his enemies. Soon after I went to David, he asked me where I wanted to go. He believed that it was unsafe for me to stay in New York. I told him that I was a caulker and would like to go where I could get work. I thought of going to Canada, but he advised me to go to New Bedford, Massachusetts, thinking that I would be able to find work there. At this time, Anna Murray, a free woman who was my intended wife, came to New York. I had written to her immediately after my arrival, asking her to come. A few days after she arrived, we were married. After the wedding, with a gift of $5 from David, we boarded a steamboat bound for Newport on our way to New Bedford. When we arrived in New Bedford, we were directed to the house of Nathan Johnson. He and his wife were most kind and hospitable and took a lively interest in our welfare. They truly deserved the names of abolitionists. We now began to feel safe and started to prepare our lives for the duties and responsibilities of a life of freedom. At breakfast, our first morning in New Bedford, the Johnsons asked me what name I wanted to use. My mother had named me Fredrick Augustus Washington Bailey long ago. I had stopped using my two middle names, so I generally was known as Frederick Bailey. When I had reached New York, I had changed my name to Frederick Johnson, but there were so many Johnsons in New Bedford that I now prefer some other name. I gave Nathan the privilege of choosing a new surname for me. He had just been reading Sir Walter Scott's poem, The Lady of the Lake, so he suggested that I adopt the name of its hero, Douglas. From then, that time on, I have been called Frederick Douglass. New Bedford's general appearance greatly surprised me. While a slave, I had formed a mistaken impression of living conditions in the North. I had supposed that Northerners possessed a few of the comforts and none of the luxuries that the slaveholders enjoyed. Because Northerners owned no slaves, I had supposed that they lived like non slaveholding white Southerners who are exceedingly poor. I had expected Northerners to be rough, uneducated people living in harsh simplicity. On my first full day in New Bedford, I visited the wharves, where I witnessed the strongest proofs of wealth. There were many ships of the finest models, best condition, and longest size. There were many ships. I was walled in by massive warehouses filled with every necessity and comfort. Almost everyone seemed to be working, but quietly, in contrast to the situation in Baltimore shipyards. I heard no loud songs from the men loading and uploading ships, no noisy oars or curves from the workmen. I saw no whipping of men, yet all the work seemed to proceed smoothly. Every man appeared to be appeared to understand his work and do it with a sober, cheerful determination that indicated a sense of his own dignity. From the wharves, I strolled around the town, gazing with wonder and admiration at the splendid churches, beautiful homes, and finely cultivated gardens. Everywhere was an amount of wealth, comfort, and refinement as I never had seen in slaveholding Maryland. Everything looked clean, new, and beautiful. I saw no dilapidated houses with poverty stricken residents, no half naked children and barefoot women, such as I'm customarily used to seeing in Maryland. This is Inform TV 100. We're coming to almost the end of the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, American slave. Please hit the like button, please hit the subscribe button, and please share. Uh, so, this is the conclusion. We'll see you in the next episode, which is probably will be the last one. God bless you. Take care of yourself as well as others.